All right. Good morning, everybody. This is the Joint Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee meeting. I'm going to call the meeting to order. I'm here, Councilmember Moreno, Councilmember Green, Councilmember Harris. So we have a quorum of both committees given the members. With that, I'd like to run through the motions that are on here. The first one is of Lawrence Timothy Lupin, who has submitted a properly completed questionnaire and motion, and I'll move for approval of Mr. Lupin, seconded by Councilmember Green. Okay, that's 3 yeas, no nays, and by the way, that's for the Historic District Landmark Commission. And then the next one is Shonda Pori by Councilmember King. Questionnaire has been properly submitted, proper motions. Moved by Councilmember Harris, seconded by Councilmember Green. Next one is also by Councilmember King for Jenny Cannon West. Proper questionnaire submitted, motion properly submitted. I'll move for up. Councilmember Green, move for approval. Councilmember Harris, seconded. 3 yeas, no nays. I know that we have somebody in the audience who wants to speak on crime. Okay, we're going to get your card, sir, so you can speak for 2 minutes. Yes, sir. We'll get your card. Please say your name and address, and welcome and good morning.
My name is Gerald DeSalle, 2131 Music Street. I'm a concerned citizen. I was up here at the City Council in 2011. And I have a letter from the White House that I had wrote on crime. President wrote me back, but the size of the crime, what's going to jump right in front of this is about the children getting shot up at school. My solution and my feeling that I think that the council would agree on this, then have security walking around the school and people getting shot. All they have to do, like these 1, 2, 3 doors here, say this is a school. We got a security at each one of these doors. So when you get ready to come in here to shoot somebody, you won't be able to go into class and shoot nobody in the school no more, because the security is going to stand at their post right there. And the children who come in school going to be scanned by the officer at each entrance of the school. They're going to be scanned and go into the school. Now here's Jan or John Doe coming there 8:45. Who you is? I'm Jan. Well, they're going to call the office and they're going to say, oh, Jan go here. They're going to scan and then Jan going in. So when 3 o'clock come, everybody's coming out of school, but nobody's going in those entrances of the school to shoot nobody. Nobody have to worry about their children no more getting shot up at the school, because I want the security to stay at their posts where it's supposed to be at, and nobody would never go into nobody's school and kill anybody. That ends that point. Now, for the crime deal, I wish the council would help me. I want to go to the White House. I believe that I can get a grant for the city of New Orleans for all those guys who have municipal records, 4 and 5 charges, that the grant that I would get, the guys will be able to use that money in each of their wards, doing what they was told to do. And once they do that, they're going to be put back in society by going to their job and fill out an application, and the people are going to be able to hire them now because their record is clear. So that means I'm getting them back in society again for them to be able to have a job, not standing on the corner asking for a cigarette, or you got a quarter in your pocket.
Sir, please bring your comments to a close. Your time is up.
Okay, I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here and for your comments. And we got your letter that you sent to the White House as well. Thank you very much. All right, now on to the voting items. I'll move for approval on the properly completed questionnaire motion for Elizabeth Bowe to the Sandy Krasnoff New Orleans Criminal Justice Committee. For the record, these next 3 votes will be for that committee. 3 yeas, no nays. Next one is for Gregory Ravi, who also has completed questionnaire and motion by Councilmember King, moved by Councilmember Green, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Please vote your machines. 3 yeas, no nays. And last, motion for Melissa Sawyer, moved by Councilmember Green, seconded by Councilmember Harris. Completed questionnaire and motion. 3 yeas, no nays, and that completes our voting for the day. So from there, we'll move on to quarterly reports. Safety and permits is chomping at the bit and already at the table. We're happy to see you all here, and we welcome you and look forward to your presentation. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity to let you know our progress in the first quarter. This morning, I have with me the Deputy CAO as well as my Chief Zoning Official and Chief Building Official. And we're prepared for any questions that you have. Again, thank you for this opportunity to show our progress this first quarter. Our current allocation, get to the slide. Our budget snapshot, our current allocation is in personnel services is $7,703,733. Operating is $3,056,760. Sorry about that. And for a total of $10,760,493. This is inclusive of our quality of life short-term rental fund allocation. And for personnel, currently we have 80, it was 82 as of this snapshot. We have 83. We had one person that started 2 weeks ago. It's 83. And we have full-time employees of 105 that were funded. The 106 is one employee that's actually in the wrong location, and we're rectifying that. And currently we have 26 vacancies, and it's 22 plus the 4 that actually, you know, last year the administration promised that they would make sure that any vacancies that were lost, if we were to fill those positions, we would get those back, and they have made good on that promise with 2 building inspectors. Well, it's 2 electrical inspectors, a building inspector and a mechanical inspector. Those were hard to fill positions that we had vacant for a long time, but they have been allocated and funded, and we are hiring. We've hired 1 electrical inspector that started 2 weeks ago, and 1 starts on Monday.
All right, can I ask a couple questions here? First, let's start with STR enforcement. And I do think we should note out loud that the STR office went from 5 people a year ago to 15 people right now, 16 people right now. So in terms of government growth, that's outstanding. I just want to make sure we know who the 7 vacancies are, number 1. Number 2, sort of how the department's working on the dashboard requirements that were part of the code change authored by Councilmember Moreno. And then number 3, also, given the lack of hearing officers, trying to move what I would categorize as the tier 1 most severe cases to municipal court, and then taking the next tier cases with the 2 hearing capacity. So I'll take them in any order you want to answer.
Okay.
But those are the 3 primary.
The short-term rental vacancies, the 7 vacancies,
Yes, ma'am.
5 MPAs and 2 inspectors.
Okay.
And then the next question was
About the dashboard.
Yes, we have the dash.
Yes, so we've been working on dashboard even before the ordinance was passed. We've been working with the Office of Performance and Accountability. As to the dashboard that was specified in the ordinance, we're working with Rebecca Houtman, who is our data expert. We have established weekly meetings and project management system to get the new laws implemented so that we can make sure that we're all ready to go by the July 1st date that the council has set. And I believe the last question was about our lack of hearing officers. Just to provide an update on that, we do have a selection committee meeting next week. We received some new applicants, so we're excited about that.
7.
We had 7 responses to our RFP. So that will hopefully give us a larger pool to draw from. It's certainly an improvement from 2. And I believe the last question was about municipal court. As we said at the last time that I was down here for STRs, we need lawyers to help us move cases to municipal court. Right now, we have one of the two that we've been allocated. We're working on replacing Mr. Smith, who left us in January.
Okay, so again, I'll try and take that up with law department.
Thank
Because
you, I
no,
appreciate it.
it's critically important to make sure that we have lawyers. It seems to me that for a long time, we sort of said inspections have been the issue, but if you don't have the lawyers and the hearing officers to push the adjudications, then it's a pinch point.
They are absolutely critical to our ability to function.
I got it. Okay, thank you.
And just one correction from purchasing, there were 12 responses to the RFQ, but only 7 were deemed responsive.
Okay.
And we have 13 requisitions open, 2 requisitions in progress. And I know as of this morning, there was at least 2 more in draft form. And that's for the 26 vacancies that we have. Like I said, we do have 1 person that starts on Monday, as well as to date, we've had 14 interviews. Of those 14 interviews, we had 4 that declined, 2 of which went to other city departments. There were 6 that we're moving forward with, and then there were 4 that we're not going to move forward with at this time, but we may consider them in the future.
Okay, and I just want to make sure, so do all 26 vacancies have requisitions that are either open or in process, or only 17 of the 26 have requisitions?
Right now, only 17 of the 26, but the MDA, we have at least 7 positions for that. And so we can select from that list. And so as we identify people, we can open that requisition easily to fill that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
So I know you asked about backlogs.
Yes,
And the initial review, we have good news. The initial review for permits is less than 5 days now. And actually, the initial application review being completed is less than 10 days now. Those more complex reviews, such as zoning and plan review, they are taking much longer. But the good news is our average permit approval is under 30 days now.
okay. And that's as a result of people in the department or outside contracting, or both?
A little both, right? Well, not outside contractors. This is people in the department for permit review. That initial review, that's just making sure all the documents are there for it to move to zoning and plan review. And then also for inspections, we're about 2 weeks behind in inspections. I would say if you call for an inspection today, maybe schedule within the 2 weeks. And that's where we are with inspections. There is the option for third-party inspectors, but that also requires us to review the documents that they send in.
Okay. All right,
And staff aug is how we intend to help with that backlog. We had 4 vendors that were qualified, and we selected all 4. There were 4 responses. We selected all 4 of those qualified vendors, and because we knew that everyone was having an issue with vacancies or staffing. And particularly in the construction industry, we know that skilled laborers, and that's where our pool is a lot, especially for the inspectors. So we selected the 4 vendors, and of the 4 vendors, they're going to fill those 28 positions for us. And these will not affect our full-time positions. We are still hiring for those full-time positions. Staff aug is limited. It's a temporary fix for 6 months. And we're going to use this as a time to assess our needs, to see what we did with those additional 28 people during this 6-month to a year period. And then also to use it to do those job studies to see what the salary should be. As far as communication with civil service, it's the 3rd month, and I know we've had at least 3 meetings with them. We've been successful, and that's part of your success as well as approving those salary increases for plan reviewers. That was effective February 19th. I know that they received those increases in the latest pay period as well as retroactive to the effective date. So that's a great win for us. And that's what we're doing with other divisions. We are in constant communication with civil service. They emailed us yesterday about an update. We're looking at the zoning division, inspection divisions to see if those salary increases, to do those job studies for those salary increases.
How much longer do we expect the contracts to be routing?
Right now, I can tell you that IBTS and DCCP are in law. I was informed that this week they will be reviewed and should be up to date. And they will be reviewing all of them. Their Safe Built was in supplier diversity approval, and Henry Consulting was at purchasing.
All right, so 2 more months? I mean, I guess.
I hope not.
I mean, I guess. I see Councilmember Harris shaking her head. We want to help move these things forward, and we understand that money is the way to help make that happen. But we can't let process bog us down. I'm not saying it's a safety and permits process, but if we're going to be till the half of the year before we can get started, we're hamstrung for 6 months. So I will make this point with the law department, but I hope that they're watching and see that the collective we would like these things to move faster, particularly since it's such a high priority. Okay, anybody else? All right, thank you all very much. We appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Mr. Burnside, no card from you? All right. All right. Next up is property management. I know Councilmember Moreno would like to say something as they're getting seated.
Thank you. That's wow. Chair Jeruso, appreciate it. That's a
Council Vice President.
Yeah.
Council Vice President, Council President, can
Hey,
I just
Angela.
ask you a quick question? You all know that we were in here on Monday because residents of Gordon Plaza were supposed to get their appraisals. Those who are physically present were able to get them that day. So we have encouraged the rest of them to get them, and some have. And we have a room upstairs of residents who are sitting and waiting to sign them out. And so the city attorney is saying that they've already been mailed out since Monday. Nothing, there's no indication of any mail. There's no evidence of any mail being sent out. And we have people who work for the mail system who know how long it takes to get there. We have.
Are they on the 5th floor?
They're on the 5th floor.
Andrew.
And they're
Andrew,
not
go up to
even
the-
asking for
I'm
the
just gonna go
paper to
print them
be.
out. We're just
They're
gonna
not
print
even
them out.
asking for the pay. Corwin
Yeah.
indicates that it's too much trouble for him to print out the papers. So we gave him a list of email addresses to email them. Now, if he's indicated that they've been mailed, they should be in the mail still. They should actively be in the mail. And the rest of them that are not here today should see them come in the mail, but we need the email to be sent. So when he's saying he's working on them,
We're gonna email all of them to you right now.
Yes,
Because
please and thank you.
I got a copy, I guess 2 days ago or something
please
like
and
that.
thank you.
Yeah, we will do it right this very moment, straight
we're
to you,
just-
Angela.
And we're just waiting to see a email pop up on an email so we can see it with our eyes and we can move forward.
Yep, you're getting it right this very moment from Andrew. Thank you, Angela, for bringing that to our attention. Before we go into the presentation, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for letting me speak briefly, because I do have to run at 10:30. Mo, I just wanted to tell you thank you. Mo heads up property management, and we, the city council, gave him a very big task with an ordinance that we passed regarding city property that is currently being unused. We asked Mo to put together dashboards to have an explanation on the condition of every one of the properties. Also, obviously, a description of the property, a visual of the property, maps of the property, And we gave them a deadline to meet of the beginning of April. And I am proud to say that Mo is going to be meeting that deadline, and those dashboards for the public and for the council will be going live very soon. And so Mo, I'm sorry, I didn't want to leave without telling you thank you for taking the ordinance seriously and the mandate to provide this public information and getting it done by the timeline seriously and getting it done. So I just wanted to tell you that.
Thank you, Councilmember Marino. I do want to say a big shout out to our folks in ITI, Carrie Dumay in particular, and Eric Ogburn, who rose to the occasion when our asset management system that we were waiting on to do this didn't happen. So we went to ITI and said, "Can you help us?" And they said, "GIS, property list, condition index. Yes, we can." Now, it's not ready to be released to the public yet. We've just been working on it literally this week, but we do have a dashboard, a couple of dashboard slides at the end of our presentation. And I assure you, it's wonderful, actually wonderful, and great system. You should be able to see, well, I won't steal the rest of my thunder for later, but you will see it by department, which department manages what property. You'll see it by council district. You'll see it by condition of the property, and you'll see an individual property, including latest photographs, some notes about when we last visited it, what are our plans for it, etc. So all that, and what I'm hoping for is that we will have a special, like a presentation to council members who would like to attend that. And we'll do a special presentation with our folks from IT who are very good at maneuvering in the system. But it will be released to the public as soon as we say, okay, good, it's good to go.
Well, look, thank you for finding a way to get to yes, instead of, hey, there's a bunch of obstacles, we just can't do it, and walking away. Instead, you found a way to get it done, and we really appreciate that. And I think that it's certainly something long overdue. I'm so glad that we're going to launch this, because I think this will also be great toward getting these properties developed. Now the public and developers, et cetera, will be able to see like what's really out there. What does the city have that we're not utilizing that potentially we could now put into use by, a variety of different avenues, including going through NORA, et cetera. And so just once again, thank you, Mo. Before I left, I wanted to make sure that I gave you credit because you certainly are due the credit on this one.
Thank you so much. And credit to the two Ashleys in real estate, et cetera. So a lot of people work on it, and not just Mo. Joe wanted to say a few words.
Hey, good morning, Council President Morel, Vice President Moreno, council members. Thanks for the opportunity for property management debrief this morning. Joe Threats, Deputy CEO, Infrastructure. I just wanted to, before Mo starts his briefing, to give him another honorable mention, him and his staff and property capital projects. We just got two brand new emergency generators lately, one on the roof, one downstairs, to power us during hurricane season. So they was right on time. They got them in place. They're just wiring the last few suites, including, I think, the council, right, Mo?
Yeah.
So we're in a good place right now going in hurricanes.
The council offices.
Yeah, council offices. As you remember last year during 2 years ago during Hurricane Ida, we spent 10 days in the dark here in City Hall, trying to restore city services. So, that's a good shout out for you. And with that, Mo, you can start your briefing.
Thank you, Joe. I do want to introduce two members of our team. Well, everybody knows Rico, but I do want to introduce Angel Debon, who is our new finance manager. So she's key to keeping our finances together, both on the personnel side and on the contract side. I also want to introduce Tony Thompson, who's our new real estate administrator. Welcome aboard. Everybody seems to know her in the real estate world, so we're glad to have her. And she's got plenty of projects that we can offload to her, starting now. Okay, on to our presentation. Let's go through the budget snapshot. Yeah. So as you can see, our personal services was budgeted at 5.5 million. And all our other contract work was budgeted at 5.3 million. Just a footnote, and I'll come back to this issue later. We did during the budgeting process last year ask for more than this, but this is what we got. We got $10.9 million in total. Now, if you look at the one slide that we want to point out is overtime. Our department has a significant amount of overtime. Certainly during Mardi Gras, we spent a lot of overtime putting up the stands, taking down the stands, etc. And that'll continue. Last year we had overtime at a clip of about $200,000 for the year. We expect the same, maybe a little bit more this year. One of the reasons for overtime is we're short-staffed, so a lot of our folks work double shifts, so there's overtime there as well. But our deputy director is very vigilant on overtime. He's constantly looking at it and making sure we don't go overboard. But thank you also for the overtime that you gave our folks during the Mardi Gras work. That was very helpful. Our folks are very appreciative of the extra money they could make during that time. Thank you. Any questions on that budget? Because I will come back to some additional requests that we have given to the deputy CAO and CAO in terms of personnel and in terms of contract work.
The only thing I wanted to double check on is that property management is allocating money from its budget to cover the items on the consent decree that the judges requested. Well,
Yes.
I just need it.
Let me.
I know Rico has been front and center and has been doing yeoman's work, so shout out where it's due. But also making sure that we have it on the record.
Let me tell you something. That is, by the way, it's not in the budget, right? It's not in the operating budget. What we found and what CAO asked us if we could look into it, and we said yes, is bond funding money that can be used for NOPD consent decree work. Now, prior to that possibility, we were dealing with, oh, is this a capital expense or is this a DPM expense? Oh my God, it's $400,000 to do this roof. How are we going to do that in DPM? So we were struggling with that, right?
Sure.
Well, we're no longer struggling with it because CAO said, use your bond funding money. We will try to replace it by the end of the year.
Great.
So that's where that money's coming from, not from this budget. It's coming from bond funding.
Got it. I appreciate your clarifying and making that point, because I think it's important to know where the funds are coming from and kind of why I went through the exercise yesterday with Vince.
And our fiscal watchdog, Angel, tells me it's 5.5 million, but it's not all for NOPD. It's the bond funding. And from there, we will finance the roofs and the walls and the whatever we have to do.
Perfect.
Thank you.
President, did you have a question? Okay, he said he's gonna wait. He's gonna wait to ask us.
All right, thank you. I move to the next slide, please. Okay, so we have a budget of 75. I can't quite see that number, but it's 71 existing people. Now it looks like we have a few jobs to fill. But more important than what this slide shows, what I want to point out is we are requesting from Deputy CAO and CAO additional people for the kinds of jobs we need to have done within the department. So it's not just what's on that slide. For example, just as an example, we don't have a space planner in DPM. We don't have a project manager in DPM, and we're taking on projects left and right. So we're asking for that. And so that's not part of this presentation, but that tells the whole picture, not just these numbers.
Well, and Mo, I'm going to go ahead to the next one where you have some of the vacancies. And like, for example, there's 2 electricians, and I know we sort of discussed plumbers. Like, is the idea that we want to contract some of this out and break up contracts? Are we hiring people? I mean, to me, it's about getting the work done.
I'll give you 2 answers to that question.
Okay, great.
One, we're working very hard with civil service to uplift the salaries, and they have been wonderful in their response. It hasn't been approved yet fully, but for example, engineer salaries are up for consideration for a decent improvement in salary. Doesn't get us up to private industry, but it gets us up to a better level. Okay.
Okay.
So one, we're trying to raise the salary so we can recruit. Second, however, we're not going to be able to recruit electricians. We have 2 electricians on our open positions. We have a senior carpenter on the open position. We're not going to be able to hire at those rates. You know what? We'd rather contract it out. We can get electricians and we can get carpenters and we can get other people on contract work. So plumbers, for example, we have 1 plumber,
Right.
right? There are times when we need 8 plumbers on the same day. We need more contracts. So for example, we're working with our purchasing folks and they're saying, well, you have one contract with a contracting firm. Break it up. We never thought of that until they gave us the idea. Don't just have one contract with one contracting firm, break it up. I said, how can I break it up? They said, well, City Hall could be a contract. The NOPD could be a contract. NOFD can be a contract. And this way you get more plumbers, more system, more people, right? That's how we're going to do it.
Thank you.
May I go back to that? So the actual requisitions we have open are for 2 laborers. They're for the cemeteries, by the way. And maintenance engineers, we still desperately need maintenance engineers, and 1 office worker happens to be at Gallier Hall. But the important thing about this slide is what I just said. We're not going to hire a senior carpenter. We're not going to hire electricians. We're going to contract that work out. Okay. And obviously, we'd like to use the money that we have in our budget and in these open recs to hire the people we need, and also to hire the people that I've told Deputy CAO and CAO that we need for this year to move forward. Okay, next slide, please. So here was the surprise. Here was the surprise. We did get an email saying, how are we doing on that dashboard for the ordinance? Well, guess what? Again, credit to our folks in IT. So this is just the dashboard, right? But when it's live, when you are actually doing it, right? You can get a listing of all the properties by department, for example. This one shows by the property management. How many properties do we have? Well, that says 456. Maybe it's 457, maybe it's 455, but it's 456. We got that number there. Now, if you go to that, whether every property that property management is going to managing will be in this dashboard, in the dashboard and the system. If you go to the next slide, I'll show it the way you would like it, by council. So by council district. So if you want to, when this is live, and by the way, it can be live within days, right? It's live now, but only internally. It's not live to the public. I have to differentiate that. It's not ready to be live to the public until we say so. And we'll probably say so probably within the next week, 10 days. But so by district, you would look at all your properties in your district. You can see active properties will be green, inactive properties will be red. So immediately you can look on the reds and say, what are we doing on 401 City Park Avenue? And by the way, there's good news on that. You know that. I believe the Capitol folks have issued the notice to proceed. So that's should be in our past.
Yes.
So by council. And the next slide, please, which shows you in this particular case, by building condition. You want to just look at poor? Look at poor. You want to look at, by the way, by definition, everything is good unless it's called poor, right? Or we don't say excellent or whatever, but we'll look at the categories that the council asked for, and we will mimic that. But what you're interested in really is poor or blighted, and there will be both. And then specifically in this particular case, we're pointing to one of our favorite properties, the 2nd District Police Station, which is the next slide as well. So now in the 2nd District, Tony was there, Rico's been there 8 times. Our operations manager, Derek's been there several times. We go there all the time because we want to do something with that property, correct? Now we're going to have photographs. We're going to have short descriptions of what's going on there. Maybe even some plans for that property. As you well know, Sophie Gumbel is one of them. That 2nd District is one of them, etc. So all those properties that you're so anxious about will be on this dashboard. with photographs, with our latest, we say, director was there on, March 24th, and the condition was X, or we found this to be Y, et cetera, and that'll be on the property. And once we release it to the public, anybody can see it.
Councilmember Harris.
Mo, thank you for this. I mean, this is amazing work. This is something that we've been asking for and interested in since I've taken office. I feel like this is my new favorite website because I will be on it constantly. And you're pointing out, for example, the Second District Police Station. We need to do something with that property. So even having the information about what's available, the condition of it, and ultimately how are we going to either rectify its condition or dispose of it. This is really a great information tool and something that my office is super interested in, and the public will be too, because I think we need to get rid of these properties if we're not able
Yes.
to maintain them. And I know you and I agree on that.
Yes,
So thank you for highlighting district.
not at all. Thank you again to IT.
And I guess, Mo, I know you're thanking IT, but your department had to be at the epicenter of this. And I guess I want to put a finer point on both what Councilmember Moreno said and what Councilmember Harris said, which is we, the council, have been asking for dashboards from departments for a long time, whether it's property management, safety and permits, blight, Department of Public Works. Yeah, I mean, I just heard Councilmember Harris say
Yes.
DPW. And you all have implemented it. And I just think this helps us all so tremendously because the information is there and we want the public to be able to see it. And so to have it come to light and to be structured in this way, I think really deserves a lot of public recognition. So thank you to you and your team and to IT and everybody
Not at all.
who helped work on it, because I think this is kind of what the public now expects, and property management is a leader in it. Councilmember Thomas.
I was trying to keep my mouth shut today. I mean, I'm probably going to get to a day when I can not say nothing. It would be nice if the air conditions worked in the summer and the heating worked in the winter. Right now in this building, that doesn't happen. What more? And the public is important, but also the people who work in this building are important. And I think we need to make sure that we advocate for them also. It's extremely uncomfortable in this building as the seasons change. When you talk about extreme heat or extreme cold, where are we with that?
I'll tell you where we are. I have been asking for a preventative maintenance program since I got to the city 10 months ago. We are now working with the purchasing department to issue an HVAC maintenance program RFP. That means we don't just fix things when they break. That's what we've been doing for probably decades. We're not going to do that anymore. At some point this summer, we will have a contract with HVAC people to come in and start doing inspections on the chillers, inspections on the boilers, inspections on the air handlers, et cetera. Not just wait for the calls to come in saying, I'm too hot, I'm too cold. Now, that's a big change. Now, that takes money, by the way. That takes money. Preventive maintenance programs for HVAC are probably going to cost us $300,000. We'll probably spend more than that without that program. So the answer to the question is, give us a little bit more time. We're going to have a program in place for maintenance programs for HVAC. And by the way, it's not just HVAC. It's for elevators. It's for HVAC. It's for generators. We're working on a program. Let me tell you something. The generators are right now, there are about 90 generators out there that service us when we lose power, right? There is no remote maintenance on that. When I was with Entergy installed those same kind of generators and they had remote maintenance. You could tell what is the condition of that generator and what is the fuel level, and should we send fuel in the next 2 days, because we know the runtime on that generator is 36 hours and we're now at 24. So ship the fuel. Those are the kinds of programs that we need to implement. And by the way, we have a program for generator remote maintenance. We're asking for HVAC remote maintenance and support. We're asking for elevator maintenance and support. I asked one of my people, when was the last time these elevators were inspected? Well, we don't know. Well, guess what? We're going to get them inspected. I mean, these things need to be done. They have not been done. I apologize for whatever, 30 years of stuff, but this is how we're changing how we manage these properties.
The other thing is that you talked about contracting out certain positions in jobs. The one thing that the data center report, I've been trying to harp on this every time we talk about opportunity contracting and budgeting. If you look at the data center report on per capita income, many of our brothers and sisters in immigrant groups have used skilled labor to double and triple African-American family per capita family income. And they haven't used math and science. They haven't used nothing. They haven't used going to the moon. They haven't used technology. They've used the skilled labor market post-Katrina to double and triple Black family per capita income. What about an effort to partner with Delgado or Sidney Collier or some of these training institutions so that we can start to train specifically young men? You know, young Black men are like a sidebar conversation today. And if we want them off the street, maybe we need to make sure put them to work. And if you drive around, many of them are not working. So what about if we can partner with some of these institutions to train them so you don't have to contract these jobs so that we can maybe provide opportunity for them?
Councilmember Thomas, you're right on the money.
I think so.
We talked to Delgado already, and I personally am going to go visit Delgado and say, what kind of training do you provide to the folks here, whether they're young men or young women?
Yeah.
We would prefer even young women because they need to get into these fields. And there's a path for that. Now, they don't solve our immediate need to fix things, right? But they solve the need over some period of time. So if we can get 2 people in this year, 2 people in next year, 4, whatever. But we are going to work with Delgado. And there are other schools of that nature that we can work with. Literally, Rico and I are going to do that because we want to go out there and recruit and show people how they. By the way, one of the things I was just mentioning to our own staff today, I like the program here that we have in the city with what's called the Management Development Analyst 1, 2, Specialist 1, 2. It brings young people into the organization and lets them grow. We have an example right here of somebody who's been with the firm for 6, 7 years. Now she's our manager of finance in this department. We have another member in the back, Ashley Givens, who started with us 6 years ago as an MDA1. Now she's like our brains, one of our brains in real estate. There she is. So that's the kind of thing we want to do. I'll tell you what, give me 6 months to work with Delgado and let's see what they can give to us. And we'll come back and report. But we have these quarterly meetings anyway. So give me until not the next quarter, but the quarter after that, and we'll report back.
Well, I know you have to address your short-term needs, and I understand that, but we've done well at addressing short-term needs and short-term solutions. The problem in our city has been long-term sustainable solutions, even with crime. This is the 6th decade we've been categorized as a murder capital. A lot of our violence issues go back to the early 1900s. When you look at the history of this, but we've never done anything that's sustainable. We've never grown our middle class, our workforce class. And then the last thing is, this isn't racial at all, right? And I'm going to keep saying it. Our most dominant population is 60% African American.
Yeah.
You cannot have a third of your most dominant population at a low the poverty level and expect to have a wholesome, safe city. So we have to begin to be intentional about going into that population to give them skills, to make sure they're going to school, to make sure that we're growing those families and that we're growing. No one should be mad or upset when you highlight a particular group that has some material weaknesses. And that is our dominant population, and Black females is the other dominant population. We got to stop bragging about them startup and make sure they have resources to stay up.
Yeah.
So, just like we got a lot of trends. Dashboard is a new word now. Well, guess what it was zero-based budgeting, total quality management, and some of those other terms,
Yes.
right? And we can go back in history and see what the new terms are. But it only works if it's sustainable. Whatever model or we come up with, if it works, then you know it's had a sustainable impact on our society. And yeah, I apologize for even talking today. I came here to want to just kind of, because I learn more when I listen. Thank you.
Give us some time on that Delgado issue. But I do want to point out one more thing. There are two things actually. One, when I first came here with Rico, and we needed to hire a chief engineer, and we needed to hire a new manager of operations. We looked around and obviously our salary structure was such that nobody from the outside was clamoring to come in here, including from my last job, follow me here. So guess what? We looked for the best we had. And we found people who'd been our chief engineer has been here 35 years or something, and he's grown up in this organization, and he's now the chief engineer. We grew this from inside. Our operations manager is inside, and these guys are heading up two big departments, important departments. The second thing we're doing, and with the help of our purchasing department, is breaking up our contracts so that smaller companies can bid on some of this stuff. So if you break up a plumbing contract, for example, instead of having one plumbing contract for the entire city of New Orleans, we may have 6, and the smaller companies could bid on that. And that's where the DBE stuff comes in, and that's what we're trying. That's what we're trying to do. You're welcome.
All right, Mo, people are excited. Councilmember Green and Councilmember Harris.
I greatly appreciate your enthusiasm and thank you very much. A couple of things that I want to comment on with regards to enthusiasm are my enthusiasm for people working at the city of New Orleans, because they are great jobs with career-minded positions, and you never know what's going to result in a career. So I just want to emphasize that one of the big benefits of these quarterly budget hearings now, and it used to be annual, is that we find out about these vacancies as we go along. There's no reason for me to call and ask you about vacancies. So I want to just emphasize to the public that is watching, young people who are about to graduate now, commencing in May and June, that there are opportunities at the city of New Orleans, that you can be a management development analyst and start, or go and get the training that is necessary at Delgado or some other place to be able to fill these inspector positions. And I'm just emphasizing the fact that we have a chance to hear about these vacancies. I'd like the next time we come for you to tell us that those 26 vacancies are filled.
Yeah.
And I know you would too.
Yeah.
But I just want to emphasize to the public the fact that every job here pays benefits, health and retirement benefits. None of them are just small salary jobs. They're not minimum wage jobs, and they all lead to career opportunities.
Yes.
Thank you. The other things I want to say are two quick things. One, I appreciate the generators that are going to power up parts of City Hall. I was told when I took the job, be ready that when the hurricanes come, the lights are going to go out and you're going to be in your dark offices throughout the entire season. So now it looks a little bit different than it was projected to me. And that's a good thing moving forward. So that's a good win for the city of New Orleans. And I want everybody to see the wins when they take place, that council offices, for example, and it's not just because it's council offices, because it involves other staff members and people who might need to come down. They'll be able to work in an environment that will enhance our ability to achieve safety in our communities. And I also want to say thank you for the dashboard and thank you for the quick response. Of course, with that dashboard comes significant responsibilities, because now the public is going to look on and they're going to see, especially buildings that they've asked about that are owned by the city that are labeled poor. Now they're going to see blighted too. So I want to emphasize to you that what you need and what property management needs to get those buildings in a condition where the public can't say that they're poor, please don't hesitate to ask.
Will do.
Tell us what you need and focus on poor and blighted, because if we're going to continue to enhance the ability to put penalties on people and also try to get inspectors and the like, we, the city, want to make sure that our inventory is of the utmost positive, best word I can use, safe condition. So please note that it is a great accomplishment to have that dashboard done, and thank you for doing it in a timely manner. Tell us what you need with regards to particular buildings, whether it be in the case of demolition resources or something that's going to have us to have a plan so that within the next 1 to 2 years, for example, there are no properties on there that are owned by the city that are blighted or poor.
Yeah,
Okay.
we will do that, sir. One of the issues is oftentimes there isn't a way out in terms of remediation. It's too much money for remediation. So we need to look at, and by the way, there's a whole strategic working group that looks at these properties and says, hey, what's our next course of action here? What should we do with this property? And the answer is different for each property, but we will follow those paths, including the Sophie Gumbel House, including the Second District Police Station, including a property on Florida Avenue, which we cleared the blight, and now there's interest from the public for purchasing that property, and we have no use for that property at all. So often it's disposition is the answer of some nature. It's not always a sale. It could be a disposition and Tony's going to run that program as part of real estate.
Yeah, well, city has the ability to even do long-term leases, for example, if it's necessary. But it's good that the dashboard is going to be in place, but people are going to see things such as in Councilman Thomas's district, the transfer station that's been there for decades that needs to be torn down because you're never going to renovate it.
Yeah.
I understand within capital projects, there's $400,000 to get that demolition done, or maybe it's a line item that needs to be funded. But the bottom line is that I'm just saying that I think the public is going to be pleased and they're going to go to this. It's going to be certainly in my newsletter. Let's have a goal that, of course, I know that you will. Don't hesitate to ask us so that within a year from now, we don't have properties that are listed as blighted. Let's say a year to 2 years, because it's a significant number.
Thank you.
All right,
Yeah,
thanks for your enthusiasm and for getting that done.
Councilmember Green, just to echo what Mo was talking about, we might have some opportunities when we look at HMGP funding from Hurricane Ida. I'm in discussions right now with our folks out of NOSEP to put together a package with some of those facilities that Mo talked about, especially the public safety buildings for hardening roof, windows, mechanical systems and stuff like that would qualify.
Good.
Thank you. Councilmember Harris, followed by President Morrell.
Thank you, Mo. Just one clarifying question on the dashboard, which again is fantastic. This is just facilities and structures. Does it include lots? For example, Poydras Row is a city-owned property.
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
Right now, we're concentrating on buildings, structures, but not yet the other properties like you just mentioned. But we'll get there.
Okay. So you're planning on adding, for example, empty lots that might be owned by the city and need
We'll get there.
upkeep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. President Morrell, Councilmember Thomas.
Thank you. Many of my questions are already answered by my fellow council members' previous exchanges. I guess my concern is, as you probably have followed, the council is working with code enforcement to take a very, very aggressive turn on blight. And I can tell you the first responses I've got from commercial owners of blighted property is, how can the city come after us on blight when they own so much blighted property?
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be very important, not just to have a dashboard explaining what the property is, but especially since you're only just doing blighted structures, we have a tremendous amount of blighted lots, to also kind of give an explanation as to why it's blighted.
Yeah.
Because I will tell you that we have a lot of very intelligent people who are tracking the city's behavior, and we cannot have two standards where we are about to bring the hammer down on blighted residential and commercial properties and not have a similar dispensation going on with city properties. The other issue, and this might be a Tony question or something to consider, is that do we have clawback provisions when we sell property? And this is why I want to say this. I have a tremendous amount of emails from people who are very upset because the city owned a blighted piece of property, sold it to a third party, and it's still a blighted piece of property. And I don't think it's in the best interest of citizens that if we're going to dispose of property because it's blighted, that somehow the individual who purchases the property continue to have it blighted. I know in many other jurisdictions across the country, there's a 2 or 3 year clawback provision where if you dispose of a piece of property because it's blighted and that person has a plan for redevelopment, that's fine. But you can't simply get property at a discount because it's blighted to then sit on it again. And really, it's also a general question. I know I've had it with Ms. Connick as well, that when we're doing development as a whole, the city needs to get much more aggressive with clawback provisions where we're not disposing of property, whether it be through long-term leases or sales, with the idea that there'll be commercial development and then it just not happen. Because I would argue in the city of New Orleans, the citizens have been burnt so many times on being sold a bill of goods that some property is going to be changing hands, whether it be in a lease or a permanent sale for a long-term development. And then 3 years later, the city has done its part to say, well, the property's back in commerce. And then we're still getting the flack because the property that was ours that we disposed of is still blighted. And not only have we not cleared the deck on that blighted piece of property, now we have to go through the entire code enforcement lien process to reacquire a piece of property that was blighted and is still blighted. So those two things I'd like to see from y'all. One, with those dashboard, it might not be available when the dashboard first goes up, but I think there needs to be at least a gist of some sort saying, this is the status of the property and here we're accepting proposals or not accepting proposals, or this is the plan for the property. Two, we need to really look at aggressive clawback provisions when we're disposing of property, because it is certainly not worth our time to dispose of city property for it to remain blighted. If it's going to remain blighted, then at least when we have it, the grass is going to get cut. When we dispose of blighted property and it gets more blighted, then we're part of the problem. The third thing, and obviously Councilmember Harris already covered it, is the lots. I mean,
Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times people call us and say, I can call code enforcement to get my neighbor's lot cut, but that city lot behind me is 10 feet tall and there's not even clear signage that it's city owned. I mean, I know it makes people feel like when they can't easily identify without amateur internet sleuthing what is city owned property, that when they see dilapidated buildings or lots that are overgrown and they discover it's city owned property, it's infuriating. So I think the sooner we can identify and track all that property and give updates as to its status, as to what the plans are with it. It could be that no current plans for site, but site will remain cleared and development's ongoing. Just something to show people we're acknowledging that property is city owned and we're going to make sure that's held to that baseline standard. I would also encourage, in the new ordinance, blight is redefined as when a property is not back in commerce, does not have power, it does not have water, does not have sewer attached to the site. I'm going to be very candid. From my perspective, the council should hold the city property to the same standard. We cannot sit on property for 5, 6, 7, 10 years that has no power, no sewer, and no plan.
Correct.
So I appreciate you're new here. It seems like you got a lot of great ideas. We really need you to tackle that backlog in a real responsible way with Tony's help. Hopefully have some great developers with ideas. I know that looking across the country, you look at cities like Brooklyn in particular, where they found dilapidated properties and using clawback provisions, they said, listen, I'll sell you this property for $1. In 1 year, I want something on it. And I mean, you saw tremendous development because the skin in the game for the city is you pay me a deposit. You say you're going to build this property, you build it, or we make cash off you because you didn't meet the terms of the contract. We need to get more aggressive and creative in getting this property back in commerce. Thank you.
Thank you. We do work with the Office of Economic Development, Jeff Schwartz and his folks, in tackling some of these issues. And by the way, it's live. Every month we get something else that has gone wrong with some property. So yes, it's live. That's a live problem.
Well, thank you for your presentation. Thank you for your time. We do have one public comment from Michael Burnside. And I'd like the record to reflect that in the remarks section, Mr. Burnside has smiley face emoji. So I take that as good news.
Yeah, I wasn't going to say anything today because I got an attitude problem, but this is the opportunity to say a good thing. So I'm going to grab it with both hands. Thank you. And not just for your enthusiasm and your leadership, but also for the idea of breaking up the contracts and disposing them among smaller people. One of the problems that we have as government is World War II taught the government that there's some sort of fake efficiency in only dealing with big business. And it is really nice if government decides to start dealing with small business, because quite frankly, if capitalism is going to be part of our social structure, I prefer my capitalism to be small than big. Thank you very much.
Thank you, property management. We really appreciate it. And-
Thank you, council members. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Okay.
we
See you
appreciate
next quarter.
it. All right. Last but not least, law department.
Okay with a political type sign in front of it. That's how it's a vacant lot. I don't know what else to do. All right. Also made with the number. Right. All right. Thank you.
Yes, it appears so. Is that Mo's? Oh, you're right there.
Thank you.
I forgot you were standing right there. No, you're not. Don't do that. Yeah. What am I doing here? Oh, God. There it is. There you go.
Hey, look, good to see you. Good to see you. Thank you very much, man.
Exactly. That is who we are.
I need for Andy. She left. Still be back.
All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see everybody.
You as well. We are going to start with our budget snapshot.
Ms. Turner, would you just mind pulling the microphone closer to your mouth? I know.
I'm so
you.
sorry. Again, good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
We are going to start with our 2023 budget snapshot. We had budgeted in personal services 6.6 million, other operating 10.5 million, for a total of 17.2 million budgeted for 2023. Year to date in personal services, we've spent 1.2 million, other operating 1.9 million, for a total of 3.2 million. Thus, we have remaining in our budget for personal services 5.3 million, other operating 8.5, and for a total budget remaining for 2023, 13.9 million. Personnel budgeted and actual FTEs by position. We have budgeted 63 positions and we have filled 59 positions. So we have 4 vacant positions. So our personnel vacancies and requisitions, as indicated before, we currently have 4 attorney vacant positions that we are currently trying to fill. We have 1 requisition in progress, so we will be onboarding an attorney very soon, and we look forward to that. Additionally, the law department is aggressively recruiting and interviewing qualified candidates to fill our vacant attorney positions. And that also includes that safety and permits position.
Okay, that was gonna be one of my questions.
Yes,
The board,
yep.
the lawyers have the board lit
Yes.
lit up, so Councilmember Harris and President Perot.
Yes. We have,
Yeah. The non-lawyers have abdicated.
yes, it is okay. Yes, we've advertised for it. We are doing our selection process right now. We have a bank of resumes that we are currently reviewing, and we hope to have some of those scheduled pretty quickly.
Great, Councilmember Harris.
Do you go to law schools to recruit?
Yes, I'm told we do go to law schools to recruit.
Which ones?
We reach out to all 4 law schools
Okay.
in the state.
And do you have summer law clerk positions?
Yes, we do.
And how many do you have?
We have as many as we can get. And so this summer, we're going to have a different program. Usually we have just a few interns, but my goal for this summer is to have 2 separate time periods for our interns. If I can get 4 to 6 per period, that would be great. But what we do is we start about March, and our attorneys actually go to Loyola and Tulane and try to recruit. Can't really get to LSU and Southern. However, we do reach out and we encourage all of those students to submit applications so that they can intern with the city of New Orleans during the summer.
How much do you pay those law clerks?
Those are unpaid intern positions. And so what we're doing right now is currently working with Sine Villavasso to try to get those positions paid this summer.
Okay. For your attorneys, you said that you advertise. Where do you advertise?
I would have to ask my HR people where we advertise, but we do advertise, and that's how we get a bank of resumes.
Are you advertising in the bar journals?
You can speak.
Is it on Craigslist? Where are you
We
advertising?
don't advertise on Craigslist.
Well, I mean, that's
Yeah,
the question.
We do advertise with Indeed, all the employment platforms. We have gone to the extent of paying the fees in order to advertise on them. And quite a lot of response from that has started to pick up. I think due in part to the fact that the city attorney has been really pushing for hiring attorneys. We've used every possible platform we can, including going to the law schools, including talking to the placement offices at the respective law schools.
Yeah, I mean, listen, when I was coming up, working at the city was a good job for a young attorney and even older attorneys. It was a good place to get your feet wet and then go on to, big firm if you wanted to go on to big firm or start your own firm. And so it's troubling to me that there are basically 6 vacancies that haven't been filled yet. Ms. Turner, since the start of your tenure as city attorney, how many attorneys have left?
I don't have that information.
Can you get
on
that
me,
for
but I
me?
can give it to you.
Okay, yeah, I mean,
But
that
the
would be,
attorneys that have left have 10, 15 years of experience. They have gone to different departments and they have gone to different agencies. And all of those departments and all of those agencies are able to pay those attorneys more than I'm able to pay them
why aren't you able to pay them more?
because I don't have it in my budget. So
Have you asked for the money to pay them more so that you can retain them?
we do ask for it. Now, we didn't ask for it in the last budget, but we will definitely ask for it. My attorneys are leaving to go to positions to make 6 figures. I don't have that in my budget to pay 15 and 20-year attorneys 6 figures.
We are paying retention bonuses for NOPD for, other services. I would think that you would want to retain attorneys that have put in 10 to 15 years by encouraging to stay through retention efforts, including money.
Of course, I want to retain my attorneys and that have 15, 20 years of experience because those are valuable attorneys.
Right.
And they have knowledge, experience. They know the workings of the law department. They know our different cases. So definitely. I think anyone will want to retain experienced employees, and it's the same thing for the law department.
Yeah, I mean, I would encourage you to put in a request for additional money so that you can retain those attorneys.
I will definitely do that. It would be my pleasure to ask for more money for the law department.
What is each attorney's caseload like?
It depends. It depends on how experienced the attorney is. It depends on the type of cases we have. So our more experienced attorneys are going to have maybe a few more cases. It's my goal, and what I like to do in the law department is pair an attorney. I like them to be in pairs. I don't want anyone to have one particular case or a caseload on their own. I'd like them to work in pairs. But it depends. It varies. Someone may have 20 cases, someone may have 40, someone may have 60, someone may have 100 cases. But the person who have 100 cases, that's just routine, and they are filing certain things at a certain period of time. So you can't compare. That's, the amount of cases someone has doesn't equal to someone else's, but it doesn't mean that it's not equitable.
The cases may not be moving. They're docketed for a particular attorney, but the activity that takes place on that case may not be as aggressive as perhaps some of the others for a person who may have 40 cases.
I mean, yeah, sure. I worked at a law firm. I've been a lawyer for the past 20 something years, but so what you're saying is the caseload is not overwhelming to your attorneys.
We wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Yeah, currently,
Well, thank you for your candor by saying you wouldn't say that. I mean, so it sounds like what you need is to increase the number of attorneys that you have, right? And it looks like that you're doing that. Are these 6 positions adequate to take some of the pressure off of the attorney's caseload?
yes,
So you don't need more than 6.
not at this moment.
Okay. All right. Well, you let us know when you do need more than 6, because if nothing else,
certainly will.
let me finish. If nothing else, I think this council has shown that they are willing to increase budgets to get better service from our departments. And so certainly we don't want to burn out attorneys who've been there. We don't want to burn out young attorneys who have no experience. And we want to make sure that the caseload is adequate and that the city is properly represented in courts of law and in transactions.
And we definitely appreciate that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Councilmember Harris. Before I get to Council President, Ms. Turner, do you have an idea when the attorneys who you have offers out to or trying to hire for will be hired?
The one attorney, yes, she will come on, I believe, April 3rd.
Okay, and what department will it in your office or safety and permits?
This is a litigation attorney.
Okay, litigation attorney. And then the other 3, you're just in the hiring process for it.
We're in the hiring process for those litigation attorneys.
Okay, and that includes the person to help safety and permits with their caseload?
Definitely. We specifically advertise for that position.
Okay, yeah, I guess, given where we are with the STR issue, I know it's a priority, but I just want to keep on emphasizing.
It is, and we are aggressively recruiting for that position because we know how important it is.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
President Morrell?
Thank you. I'm going to start in a slightly different vein than Councilmember Harris. How many professional service contracts does the city currently have with outside law firms?
Let me get that for you. It appears currently 3.
3. And what's the total cost of those contracts? Let me rephrase that. What is the exposure? Because some of the contracts are up to a certain amount. So do you have an idea of how much each of those 3 contracts are worth?
I don't, but I can get that to you.
Okay. What I'd like to do, I know that various departments around the city all at times hire outside counsel. And I know we've had some conversations. The only time you really are able to control costs of when you have outside law firms is when you've got the in-house law firm checking the billing and making sure the billing is appropriate. I think that there needs to be, and I was talking to the budget chair, possibly it's going to require an ordinance to mandate that no matter what group inside of the different city departments hires outside law firms, that ultimately they're parked inside of your budget so that you can have complete oversight over costs. Because the major issue is, as we're trying to discuss, and I wholeheartedly agree with Councilmember Harris that, and we've seen it tremendously with Curo, for example, when the city council created our Curo office where we put some legal counsel involved there, our cost to outside counsel dropped exponentially. Because when you have in-house lawyers who are salaried attorneys or salaried professionals, and you're not paying hourly, you get some people who have well-paying jobs, but you also save the city a tremendous amount of money because outside counsel is always more expensive. Now, there are instances in which conflicts arise, particularly between the different branches of government, and you have to go to outside counsel, but depending on the counsel and situation, I think it's appropriate to make sure a lawyer is checking the billing. So I'm going to work with Councilmember Jeruso and figure out how to appropriately structure that. But I think in many of these instances, just having more city attorneys properly resourced is a better avenue than hiring outside counsel almost every opportunity. Because I know in our own personal experience, I know Councilmember Moreno's not here. There have been many times where the in-house attorneys and the outside attorneys have disagreed on issues, and it has caused a quagmire where if we didn't have hired the outside attorneys, we could have solved it in-house. So I think that's important. Another issue, which I'm sure you knew was going to come up and you're probably dreading it, is I really need to talk about the separate consent decrees we have going on right now. And I want to talk about it insofar as we have a tremendous amount of overworked city attorneys and overworked attorneys. And some of the recent stories we've seen and recent strategies, I'm very concerned that when lawyers are driving the train, when it came to the sheriff and the NOPD consent decree, within the last 2 years, in both decrees, we were supposed to be on a path to those decrees ending. And there have been a tremendous amount of bad stories and political considerations that have kind of spiraled and spun those out. And I'm just trying to understand. We'll start with the sheriff consent decree first. It became evident when this new council started that we wanted to just go towards resolving it rather than having this perpetual losing fight over whether a phase 3 or not. I know that though the sheriff has in-house counsel, because we're on the hook for the funding for the sheriff's office, the city attorney's office is intimately involved in trying to figure out what we're going to do with that. Where are we on the sheriff consent decree?
So right now, the OPSO consent decree, as you know, our only part in that consent decree is to build phase 3.
Right.
So we've advertised for it and we are moving towards the construction phase for phase 3.
Okay. And from your meetings, the public ones you've had, not the private ones, obviously, from your perspective, does the federal judge and justice department feel like we're working towards a point that we're now operating in good faith and we're going to resolve that?
Definitely. If there are any problems, Judge North will call me himself.
We know Judge North does not hold his tongue. So,
And
yeah.
we will work it out. So I believe that they are very pleased with the progress that we are making and have made since I became city attorney.
Okay. So that's one.
What, can I interrupt for 1 second on this?
Uh-oh. Okay.
So one on that is the OIG apparently is now having a dispute with the sheriff's office about information owed under the audit performed, and has now formally sent a subpoena. And I just want to say out loud that I don't think it should be the city of New Orleans who has to fund that litigation if there's a fight. And I see you shaking your
I
head.
agree.
Right. And at the same time, there has been a statement that a dismissed employee is considering a whistleblower lawsuit against the sheriff's office. Similarly, at least my position is the city of New Orleans should not have to fund that litigation either.
I agree.
All right, thank you. Sorry, Councilmember.
Okay, now to the other consent decree. I am, and this, I'm do not intend to put you in an awkward position, but you're here, so the awkward position is yours. As an attorney who's been practicing almost as long as Councilmember Harris, she's a year ahead of me in her practice. I do not understand the long-term strategy in issuing a press release telling a judge you're not going to participate in meetings that are part of a consent decree. And my concern as an attorney, as a city, is that it does not seem to me, I attended actually the hearing before the last one, the last public hearing. I think I saw Kevin when I was there. And it does not seem like to me at this point that there is any forward momentum on ending the consent decree. And I'm trying to understand, and you might not have an answer to this, because I mean, it might be a political situation, but I don't understand the strategic legal position of telling a federal judge, nah, I'm not coming to your meeting, and no one else is either. And I was wondering if there was some legal strategy that I've been missing in that exchange. That's all.
I don't think there's a legal strategy that you're missing. I think the position that was taken was that we were complying with the four corners of the consent decree.
Okay, I think that's a fair answer. So the position, which is an interpretation, not a legal position, which is that since the four corners of the decree did not specifically require those specific meetings, that they are voluntary. That's not, like I said, that's the strategic, non-legal position. Would that be correct?
It's the position that I stated. Yes,
Okay,
that's correct.
all right. I appreciate that answer. I guess my last question, and obviously, and this is not regarding consent decrees, we'll move past that now, so I'll get back to happy place. I share Councilman Harris's concern about city attorneys and burnout. I do think the fact that you've got so many positions open is very concerning. And I think that I really want to get those numbers back as far as the outside counsel, because it's all the same pot of money. And I know just on one contract we're dealing with currently on one item, we have a private firm that's authorized to give up to $2 million in funding. And I could tell you, I think $2 million would be much better spent expanding the city attorney's office to do the legal work in-house. Because even though it's nice to have outside counsel in very limited circumstances, I think that taking the pressure off the individual attorneys, resourcing them properly, I'm amazed that y'all do that much work with that few paralegals. Just because when you look at most major law firms, you're talking about a paralegal per attorney, if not per two. So your attorneys aside, your paralegals must be swamped. So if there's anything we can do to control the costs on the front end of letting out so much private work for items that really could be handled in-house, and the fact that we could possibly repurpose that money into making the city's attorney's office more robust, I think that would be the best use of our time and our money. That's just my, so the reason why I want those numbers on those outside contracts is that I think it's important from our perspective, just like the council did with our energy advisors, is to say, well, how much of this work could we have done in-house? And I think it's a better investment going in next year's budget to try and figure out ways to expand your office to do it in-house.
And Councilmember Morrell, I really do appreciate that because we agree. I have three / paralegal slash secretaries. I need one or two more, but we can talk a little bit
Yeah.
more in detail regarding how you get those positions. Previously, we thought that if we had the money, then we have positions, but we're moving differently now. And if we need positions, I think there's a process that we have to go through, but hearing you, and you all saying that you will support the law department and support an increase in budget, I really appreciate that because that's the only way we are going to maintain attorneys.
One more quick question. I know civil service typically does a reevaluation of what the salary should be of certain positions. Have they done a recent evaluation as far as what is available in the private market versus the public? Is I say that because one of my primary complaints about civil service is that when they look at professional positions like engineers and attorneys, they tend to err on the side of bargain basement.
Right.
And part of the reason why you probably have trouble filling that is, I mean, you could be a junior associate at almost any plaintiff firm out of law school with more hours and less benefits, but you could make tremendously more than you could in public service. And I'm not saying we have to match those numbers that are out there, but when they're so far out of whack, especially when you talk about student loan debt, even people who might want to work for you can't. And so I think it might be important based upon the openings and what those salary levels are at. I think the council would even support going back to civil service and saying, yeah, these numbers are too low, because it doesn't help us if we give you the FTEs for those positions when they're at salary levels that you and I both know no one's actually going to show up. And I mean, I think that's generally a problem. I'll speak generally on city employees as a whole. The fact we don't do cost of living increases, the fact we don't do these basic things that other cities do, it makes it hard to hold on to the attorneys to begin with. But if they're going to start at a low salary to begin with, they're at the mercy of the 5 to 10 year cycle where administrations occasionally do a pay raise. So if those salaries start too low, it's going to be really hard to lure someone in when they know that they're not going to get a COLA adjustment every year when inflation spikes like it's doing right now.
And that's definitely true. So for my department, all of my employees are unclassified,
Okay.
which is a good thing for
Right.
us because I'm able to pay more than the classified employees. For example, I recall a secretary or paralegal position on the city's website being advertised for $29,000. You can't live in the city of New Orleans for $29,000. So what I have done regarding my support staff is I think I gave them between $9, $10, maybe $12,000 raise for all of them so that they can stay. I've also decided that, and I had to give up a position to do that.
Right.
And it was worth the position to keep them employed because they are valuable. So, and that's what Councilperson Harris was saying as well. We have to keep our valuable employees. So that's what I've done for my support staff, including the receptionist. Now, also what I've done is everyone, it doesn't matter, straight out of law school, I will not offer an attorney less than $75,000. So that we've had attorneys working in the law department making 50 something $1,000. I can't keep attorneys like that. My 15 and 20 year attorneys, they have moved to different departments. We have a great one sitting at the end of the DS
Right.
that I hated to lose. However, you guys were able to pay her more money. I have some other attorneys that went to other departments and other governmental agencies. They were able to pay more money. So I thank you so much for your support. And I will definitely look to try to increase our budget for our personal services so that we can pay attorneys more money, so that we can hire more attorneys, and so that we can retain the attorneys we currently have.
Thank you. I do appreciate, I will say this much. When I came, the amount of money you're currently paying your full-time attorneys is probably not sufficient. And I say that
Bargain
because,
basement, as you said.
yeah, because at the end of the day, like when I came, I was fortunate or unfortunate. When I came out of law school and was a public defender, that's when public defenders were still part-time.
Right.
So though the salary wasn't adequate, I could also practice law on the side. There is a clearer path through a variety of third-party organizations or people who are public defenders and district attorneys to get loan forgiveness. And the path is not as clear, I think, for city attorneys. And I think that when you look at the sheer amount of money it costs to repay law school when you go, that you're probably going to have to revisit what that starting salary is. I know a tremendous amount of young attorneys who would love to spend 5, 10 years in public service because they are passionate about it and they want to get their, like Councilman Harris said, get their feet wet in an area where they can learn a lot in a lot of different areas at once. And I mean, city attorneys kind of become a Swiss Army knife of issues, but at the numbers you're offering, I mean, you really are going to struggle to fill positions. I mean, you just are, especially considering even the smallest plaintiff or defense law firms that are offering barely competitive salaries beat you at that level.
Right.
And I mean, they beat you at that level. And even if it might be worth just to offer some free unsolicited advice, it might be worth talking to headhunters to see what the going rate is, and then work with us to see how to meet the going rate, because headhunters are actively engaged with, the musical chairs of moving lawyers between firms, and they'll let you know what the going rate is for a 1, 2, 3, 4-year lawyer, because they're moving them around in real time. At the very least, then you're not recruiting with one hand behind your back.
Thank you, and I appreciate that, and we'll do that as well. And your observation is correct. We will get young attorneys straight out of law school, but at the time it's time for them to start repaying their student loans, that's when they leave, because they need to make more money because they just can't afford to live and pay student loans at the same time. So we appreciate that, and we're definitely going to jump on it. So thank you so much for your support.
Thank you.
I think you have maybe one more slide. I know you have the slide on the judgments, and I think when it comes to judgments, I appreciate the fact that some money has been spent.
Yes.
But I think it would help for me at least, and I think for people who have comment cards for who want to speak on it, to understand the process of how the city starts, where the list is, how it's working down. I know, but I think I understand, but I'm not quite sure I completely understand.
It's not a problem.
Okay.
And I'm really excited to report on this.
Okay.
So first, thank you all so much for giving us the additional $7 million this year to pay down the judgment. We so appreciate that. So the process is, once the money is allocated, what we do is we send a letter out to everyone on the list.
Okay.
You get a letter, and the letter states that there are 2 options for payment. And I believe it was maybe 2 councils before you who came up with this. 2 options for payment. There's a 50% option. So you can take 50% of what's currently on the list. The second option is you can take 10% of your principal and interest and remain on the list. If you remain on the list, then we continue to go down the list. We send you a letter, and the options are clearly stated. You check an option, you send it back to us, and that's when we start the process of trying to request the check. So it's a real simple process, I'm hoping. We don't have many problems with it. The only problems we have, as you know, is we have a lot of old claims on the list. So we do try to find the attorneys and claimants and things like that. That's just a small snafu. It's not major. So thus far, our 2023 payments, that's cash in hand, we've paid out $1.8 million already this first quarter. Also, we have another $1.5 million in acceptances, and that was as of March 22nd, I believe. However, in real time, as of today, we have $4.8 million in acceptances. So we are doing extremely well. We're getting the letters out, with contacting the attorneys and keeping up the list. So we have currently 578 claims on the list, and we have sent offers up to 472
Okay.
just this first quarter.
And then of the whatever the number is, like 3.4 million
Mhm.
that either people have been paid or they've accepted, how many claims does that get off the books? Do we have a total number?
472.
Oh, so 472 claims are removed?
We have sent offers up to number 472.
Right, I know. I guess my question though is, I know you've sent offers to 472. That's what I would consider the denominator. Now I'm looking for the numerator. So in other words, how many people have accepted the offer or have received money of those 472?
1.5. In addition to that 1.8 we've already sent out.
Right, that's 3.4, but I'm asking how many of the 472 people who have judgments,
Mhm.
how many of those people have either accepted the judgment or have payment? Is it 237? Is it 129?
That's the only number I didn't calculate
Okay,
for you.
can we get, you mind just getting?
I
that,
don't
Mr.
mind
Yeah,
at all.
I think that would help us because I'd like to know how that money is working and how we're moving down the list.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
All right, if there aren't any questions, and I would just note, I kind of whispered over to Councilmember Harris, I think y'all have been the one department that has significantly spent down the one-time money, so we're appreciative of that fact. All right, so I have 3 comment cards on law, Ms. Holtzman, Mr. White, and Mr. Maynard. And everybody will have 2 minutes to speak.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councilman Jeruso, members of the City Council, members of the City Attorney's Office. My name is Shannon Holtzman. I am a citizen of New Orleans. I've lived here almost my entire life. I've worked here and hope to continue to work here for my entire life. I represented a company, Municipal Administrative Services, who you will hear from the president. You'll hear from him in just a minute. And I'm going to abbreviate the company as MAS. MAS was retained by the city of New Orleans under a professional services agreement, the city's form agreement, and his company provided professional auditing services over a long period, 3 or 4 year period that resulted in $33 million put into the coffers of City Hall. And then what happened? He got gut punched over and over and over. After his work and his company's work resulted in $33 million, the city, and I realize this is way before anyone's time in front of me right now, but because it was back in 2002, the city said, no, we're not going to pay you. And in fact, the city said, we're going to sue you. And the city did sue my client. So my client was forced to file a compulsory counterclaim. And we won. We got a federal court judgment saying, City of New Orleans, you have to pay when you receive these payments from Bell South, that's how old it is. Bell South hasn't been around for 20 years. When you receive these payments in 2004, 5, and 6, you must pay. We order you to pay MAS this amount that you agreed to pay them. And there was also a $1.something million back judgment, damages that were already owed. And then MAS got punched in the gut again. 2003 came, no payment. We checked with the city, got public records request. Yes, they received their money from Bell South. Did MAS? No, never received payment. The city appealed to the United States Fifth Circuit. We were affirmed in full. The city then sought writs for the United States Supreme Court. Writs were denied. All this time, MAS obviously is paying my firm to do what it never should have had to have done. It did what it was supposed to do, and the city just refused to pay. The city decides that the judgment in favor of MAS is going to be deemed final as of the time that the Supreme Court denied cert, which was in 2005. And then here comes the next sucker punch. No payment, no settlement offer, nothing until late 2017, 15 years after the judgment was rendered. And the settlement offer that was made was, as the city attorney referenced, a program in which 10% is offered and you can remain on the list, or 50%, no interest, and you're fully settled. So basically, what you're asking that a judgment holder to do is to say, years later, you could have settled before, and you probably did settle before, because a lot of these judgments are already settlements. They're judgments on settlement. So they already compromised the amount that they were owed. And now the city's saying, well, we'll give you 50%. And some people are taking it because they're just tired of dealing with this. MAS took a 10% offer and was procured an agreement, a signed agreement from the city attorney's office that said, your acceptance of this 10% offer will not affect your placement on the judgment list. And we were told over and over and over in writing and verbally, yes, our practice is we pay oldest judgments first. And we're going to go back to the list next year and each subsequent year and offer the oldest judgments. By now, MAS is one of the oldest judgments. We're going to give you this 10%, 50% offer first. Well, guess what? He hasn't received an offer since 2017. Just respectfully, Madam City Attorney, when you said we send a letter to everyone on the list, that's just not true. You're going down the list, but those judgment holders who are much older and who either declined the 10% or 50% offer, or who took the 10% offer and remain on the list for the rest of it, they're not getting offers. And if this continues to go like this, they might never get offers because the judgment list grows every year. It's so duplicitous. It just makes me crazy. And this problem is not going to go away, okay? The interest on MAS's judgment is in excess of $1 million. That's not a good financial practice for the city of New Orleans. And this interest, it's not something just like, oh, you've been holding our money since 2001, you owe us interest. The interest is in the judgment. It's part of the judgment. So that's not going away. And I will also tell you that these judgments, they don't prescribe. All you have to do is revive them every 10 years. We've done that now twice. And they are assignable. So if Mr. George White ever does finally throw up his hands and say, I'm sick of constantly pursuing this, he can assign the judgment. That judgment is not going away. We need a real plan for paying it and getting rid of it. And so you don't have to hear me testify again in front of you. We need a workable plan. I respectfully submit that lawyers, I'm a lawyer, I know that we are not trained in effective payment of accounts receivable. That's not our training. Perhaps what the city attorney's office needs is some help, or maybe even this judgment holder issue gets moved to another.
Ms. Holtzman, all right. So can I stop you? Because we're over, and I guess a couple of things, I've said this before, I'll say it again. Ms. Holtzman's my former law partner. I want to have that in the interest of full disclosure, so nobody accuses me of asking anything incorrectly. And parenthetically, my shareholder status in Lisco and Lewis was divested at the end of 2017. So I have zero interest in the outcome of this financially or in the future. But I do have a few questions. Number one is, Mr. White has a federal judgment?
Yes.
All right. So, all right. I guess, has there been any thought about, I'm just going to ask, execute? Well, it's a federal judgment.
It's a federal judgment.
I mean, what?
I'll tell you exactly what happened.
Well, hang on. I want to ask the questions first. Okay. So that's number one. Number two is, And I'm just gonna say to the city, it's a federal judgment, so you ought to think long and hard about that. Just saying. Number two is, the last formal offer Mr. White MAS received is in 2017. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right, so law department, I think there needs to be an offer tendered in short order to MAS. Number three is, what is the total amount of the judgment, both in terms of principal plus interest?
MAS's judgment?
Yes.
Oh, gosh, I don't have that in front of me.
Okay, Mr. I'll ask Mr.
White
White.
might know.
Yeah.
I know it's in excess of $1 million.
Okay. And then maybe the question to think about, because I feel like inherent in your position is Mr. White is not willing to accept either the 10% or the 50%. What is he willing to accept?
Well,
And I'm not asking you to answer
sure.
that on the record. I'm just saying,
I know, I understand that, but what I'm saying to you is he's been waiting for more than 20 years.
I-
So I don't know what he's willing to accept, but a 50% no interest offer, I don't know that that's fair or reasonable or something that the city wants to be known for doing. I mean, I heard the earlier, and I'm sorry, I'll try to be real quick, but the representative from Public Safety Department say that they're putting out RFPs to get services agreements to maintain and monitor the HVAC and maintain and monitor elevators, et cetera. Well, I tell you what, if these people who are thinking about putting in bids for that type of agreement, if they're paying attention to what's going on, they better front load that bid high and get payment up front, because otherwise there is no assurance that they will get paid. City contracts just don't mean anything in our experience. I know that that's not true, most likely for most city contracts, but in our experience it is. And I would also like to just echo Councilman Morell's comment earlier that we can't have two different standards for the city that the city holds its citizens to versus the standard that the city itself follows.
I trust me, I understand
I
that.
don't pay the property bill. I can't go and say, oh, I'll pay you 50% 20 years later. No, that's not right.
Well, I guess this is what I'm going to ask. I mean, I know Mr. White, you're welcome to comment, but can we please have a meeting of the lawyers afterwards just to begin discussing? Well, I mean, look, if it's been 20 years and Mr. White has been here multiple times, he has emailed us. I think even if you don't have a formal letter, let's begin formal discussions today.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
You're
All right, Mr. White, you're next, then Mr. Maynard.
Again, thank you for the opportunity to appear before you. And
Mr. White, will you just pull the microphone closer to
Yep.
your mouth, please,
Yep.
sir? Thank you.
thank you for the opportunity to appear before you, and I appreciate this council and your thoughtful questions. Generally, from what I've been watching you, I guess for the last year or so, I think this council is really trying to make a considerable difference in how the city runs. Specifically to MAS, we have provided you a lot of different information over the last year, and most of that is from my professional consulting background. And when we weren't paid, I'll try to figure out why, other than you just didn't want to pay us. I try to look at your process, the city's process for paying judgments, and that's why when I found that IG report on the law department and it just did some analysis on how the law department operates, I thought that was insightful, and I share this with most of you. Not critical of the city attorney's office. I think that the judgment payment process, it requires the city council to be a partner in that, in developing a more comprehensive strategy to make sure that the city doesn't carry this risk over a long time without a comprehensive solution. And those are some of the thoughts that I've shared with you in the various emails that I've
30
sent you.
seconds.
As far as MAS judgment, I think with interest, we're probably about $2.6, $2.8 million. We welcome an opportunity to have a thoughtful discussion with the city about settling that. It's been 20 years. I'd like to retire from my company at some time, and this is this forces me to continue to work and provide free consulting service for the city. Is at least nothing else. It's not just me on the judgment list. And I try to represent myself when I communicate with you that I'm being thoughtful and trying to bring forth a solution and not only coming to you with problems.
You've been extraordinarily thoughtful and reasonable, so we appreciate that. That's your time. Ms. Turner, did you want to say something before Mr. Maynard, or just have a conversation offline?
I see where they are on the list, so I can have a conversation with them afterwards.
All right, we'll have a conversation afterwards.
Great.
Anyway,
Thank you.
thank you for being here. All right, Mr. Maynard. Good morning still.
Good morning. Thank you, council persons, for letting me speak. As Ms. Holzman, client, said, we also were last made an offer in 2017 and have not been made an offer since. Dan McNamara told me yesterday we were number 144 and number 145 on the list. So I don't know where they're getting their statistics from now, but let me tell you a very short story. It happened 15 blocks from here 25 years ago when little Lance Stewart was on his way home from school, very excited because he had just gotten on the honor roll, which is pretty good for a boy from the projects living with a single mother with two brothers. Unfortunately, a city vehicle, while he was crossing the crosswalk, speeding, knocked him 30 feet in the air, landed on his head, fractured his skull, put him in a coma for 6 months. He couldn't walk or talk for a year. She came to see me 6 months later. We filed suit. The city denied liability, even though they were speeding. He was on a crosswalk. Kept asking for continuances after continuances. Finally, 4 years later, on the Sunday night before Monday trial, which the judge had continued several times, city attorney said, look, I'm going to ask for another continuance unless you dismiss the police officer. Because there is no bar against executing on the employee. But we said yes, because he said, if you do this now, we won't ask for another continuance. We'll settle the case and you'll be paid shortly. That was 21 years ago. It wasn't until 2017, when Lance is now over 20, that we got the similar offer, 10% of everything, and you stay on the list, or 50% of principal. In that case, and you've got to understand something. The principal was $4 million. And that was a negotiated compromise, even though his future medical costs were projected out to be much more than that, just the medical costs. But because the city did not pay, he could not get the sophisticated treatment he needed for brain damage. And he has gotten worse and worse. And the last 25 years has been hell on earth for him. And it was an accident. And I'm sure the city employee didn't intend on harming him, but failing to pay is intentional. And failing to pay made it worse. He's been victimized twice. So what I would ask the council to do, and I asked the council this, I think it was 6 years ago when I testified. The current DA and the mayor, I believe, were on the council, and they said it was immoral what the city has done. Immoral. What I want to know is, in the last 25 years, when the city had been paying all these other debts, what makes these debts more righteous than the debt to this 8-year-old boy whose life was destroyed? I sent Councilman Giarrusso, and he's been very good with me and talking to me about this, and Councilman Thomas, and a picture of Lance. the day before his accident, when he was getting his honor roll student award. Now he is basically working at Walmart in a makeup job for 20 hours a week, just basically because of a wonderful program that Walmart has. The city, that Walmart has treated him more and better than the city has. So I'm not sure where the city council or where the city attorney gets the facts from, saying that 472 offers have been made out of 500. I'm number 144 and 145. We haven't been made a single offer since we accepted the 10% 5 years ago. So again, what I would like to know is, what is it that makes all these other debts the city's paid over the last 25 years more righteous than the debt to little Lance Stewart and his mother? That's anything you all can do to avoid the city attorney setting up an offer that basically forces poor people to accept pennies on the dollar. It would help. To waive the interest, there's $2 million in interest on this case. Why should he waive $2 million in interest on the case? Why should he waive $2 million in principal on the case? So basically their offer for a $6 million verdict is $2 million. Now, today's judicial interest rate is 6.5%. So that, when they made this payment in 2017, the judgment now with interest is higher than it was then. I'm sure the city can float a bond issue that pays less than 6.5%. I'm not sophisticated or know enough about this. All I've been doing is, all I do is practice law, and I've been doing it for 50 years. And I've never seen an injustice like this from anybody, much less the city. City used to pay back in the day, up until maybe Katrina. Every 2 or 3 years, the city would pay their judgments because they'd have to float a bond issue, and S&P or Moody's wouldn't give them a rating unless they paid off their judgments. I don't know what happened, but they stopped. They stopped back then.
Well, I can't answer for what the city did from 2005 forward. I think what we can say is we felt very strongly that if the city was going to have in their budget that they were going to pay down their certificate of indebtedness, then whatever they paid, we needed to do a similar amount in judgments to people who are due and owing. So we've matched that now. I know that the judgment list was like $37 million. The 9 that we allocated is clearly only a quarter, but my hope was that as a signal that we were going to try to get this down to where it needs to be. And my hope is that your being here today and your testimony helps with getting the case settled, and we figure out also, if you're 144 and 145, what's going on to make sure that you are not only in conversations, but in the mix to get this resolved.
Well, I appreciate everything you've done, Councilman. I really do. The problem is that this is not doing anything to help my client. And I don't think it's fair to, after we've already negotiated down and we were promised, release the police officer and you'll get paid, and we won't ask for another continuance after 4 continuances. And then take 20 years later before they pay 10 cents on the dollar.
I don't think anybody here is going to argue with that. That's not fair. And that's the reason why we increased it. And we want to make sure that people get paid. And look, fairly or unfairly, for all city officials, we inherit problems all the time. I didn't create the potholes. I didn't create the judgments. I didn't create the water pipes that are old, but there are problems now. And now that there are problems, we want to work with you in helping solve this.
Again, I appreciate it. My problem though is that the city just got what, $445 million from COVID release funds, and you've raised it from 2 million to 9 million. And by the way, 1/4 of the judgments, that doesn't include the interest. So if there were 35 million unpaid judgments, you got to figure with interest has got to be 70 million. And so how does 9 million make a dent in that? I think it should be, when you get 445 million COVID release funds, I think you should pay the debts that you owe.
I understand. One thing I would say to that is we can't use the ARPA money to pay for judgments. That is in, so I understand your point. Very well taken. Revenue is increased. My hope is this becomes a down payment on finalization rather than just a step in jerking people's chain or leaving them.
Since I have the same judgment and time periods as Mr. White, would the city attorney be willing to negotiate with us as well?
Okay,
After this?
that's obviously what we're asking for. Thank you, Mr. Maynard. Thank you for your time today. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate it very much. And then I guess we will stand at ease till 1 o'clock when we come back for the Sewage and Water Board Advisory Committee. Thank you all.
You're welcome, and
Thank you.
thank you all for your time.